Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aisha and you're watching Samaa News. Here are today's headlines. The White House has announced some members of a so-called Board of Peace that is to supervise the temporary governance of Gaza, which has been under a fragile ceasefire since October. According to a plan the White House unveiled in October, the names include US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, President Donald Trump's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Trump is the chair of the board. The White House did not detail the responsibilities of each member of the founding executive board. A new Palestinian committee tasked with governing Gaza has held its first meeting in Cairo. Mediators say the body will be led by former Palestinian Authority official Ali Shaath. The meeting comes as the United States moves ahead with Phase 2 of its Gaza plan, aimed at setting up a transitional technocratic administration. Canada and China have struck an initial trade deal that will slash tariffs on electric vehicles and canola, as both nations promise to tear down trade barriers while forging new strategic ties during Prime Minister Mark Carney's visit. Carney said after talks with Chinese leaders, including President Xi Jinping, that Canada will initially allow in up to 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles at a tariff of 6.1% on most favoured nation terms. Security forces have killed 12 terrorists during operations in Baluchistan's Karan district, foiling what they described as an attempted hostage situation. The military said the attackers targeted a police station and 2 banks before being driven back, adding that a sanitization operation is continuing in the area. Iran's deadly crackdown appears to have broadly quelled protests for now, as state media reported more arrests on Friday in the shadow of US threats to intervene if killing continues. After President Donald Trump's repeated threats of military action against Iran in support of protesters, fears of a US attack have retreated since Wednesday. US allies, including Saudi Arabia and Qatar, conducted intense diplomacy with Washington this week to prevent a US strike, warning of consequences for the wider region that would ultimately impact the United States. On the other hand, the US Energy Department is weighing a plan to swap heavy Venezuelan oil for US medium sour crude to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. According to reports, the proposal would move Venezuelan crude to storage at Louisiana's offshore oil port, while US crude would go directly into reserve tanks, using an exchange mechanism the government has used before. Also, thousands of Cubans have rallied outside the US Embassy in Havana against what they called US aggression after a US military operation in Venezuela that captured Nicolas Maduro and killed 32 Cuban officers. President Miguel Diaz-Canel, speaking in military uniform, urged unity against pressure from Washington as tensions between the two governments deepen. President Volodymyr Zelensky says a Ukrainian delegation is heading to the United States for talks on security guarantees and a post-war recovery package. He said Kiev hopes the documents could be signed on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos, as Ukraine seeks clarity on Russia's position toward US-backed peace efforts. And a landmark treaty to protect the world's high seas comes into force on Saturday, ending nearly 2 decades of negotiations. The agreement will legally bind more than 80 countries to conserve marine biodiversity in international waters. Environmental groups say the pact is a key step toward protecting 30% of the world's oceans by 2030. That's all for now. For more updates, visit www.samaa.tv. Thank you for watching Samaa News.